Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashottatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashottatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Skoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Maya Yamuna Maya Ki Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande All gloriously assembled devotees. All gloriously assembled devotees. All gloriously assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shindavari Asjatya Deshitani. Over to internet? Hare Krishna. So we are, after a couple weeks of learning about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, we're continuing our study of the Bhagavad Gita. We're starting chapter 5. Anybody know what the title of chapter 5 is? Karma Yoga, yes. A couple people said it, very good. Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Chapter 3 was entitled just Karma Yoga. So this is going a little bit deeper. And starts off with a question. And chapter 3 also started off with a very similar question. So we have it on the screen above. I'll say it 3 times, then if you like, you can also chant it. Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Purnar Yogam Chasamshasi Yatschaya Etayor Ekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Purnar Yogam Chasamshasi Yatschaya Etayor Ekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chasamshasi Yatschaya Etayor Ekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam. Please chant.
Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Cha Samsasi Yakshreya Yatayor Ekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam.
Arjuna Vacha
Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chasamshasi Yatschreya Etayor Ekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam.
Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chasamshasi
Yakshreya Yatayor Ekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam.
Arjuna Uvacha Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Cha Samsasa Yachtriya Eteyor Ekam.
Yakshaya Etayor Ekam.
Tane Bruhi Sunishtikam.
Tanam Krishna
Punayogam cha shamsasi.
Punayogam cha samsasi
Yachriya etayorekam.
Yakshaya Etayor Ekam.
Tanme bruhi sunishchitam.
Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam.
Arjuna vacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Sanyasam karmanam Krishna.
Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna.
Punaryogam sa samsasi.
Punayogam cha samsasi.
Yachriya etayor ekam.
Yakshaya Etayor Ekam.
Tanme bruhi sunishchitam.
Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam. Anyone else? Sure. We'll do the word for word. Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna said,
Arjuna said.
Sanyasam.
Sanyasam
Renunciation.
Renunciation
Karmanam.
Karmanam
Of all activities.
of all activities
Krishna.
Krishna
O Krishna.
O Krishna
Puna.
Puna
Again.
again
Yogam.
Yoga
Devotional service.
devotional service
Cha.
Cha
Also.
also
Shamsasi.
Shamsasi
You are praising.
you are praising
Yat.
Yat
Which.
which
Shreya.
Shreya
Is more beneficial.
is more beneficial
Etayo.
Etayo
Of these two.
of these two
Ekam.
Ekam
One.
one
Tat.
Tat
That. Me.
me
Unto me.
unto me
Bruhi.
Ruhi
Please tell.
Please tell.
Sunishchita.
Sunishchita.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work. And then again, you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? Purport. In this 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. Devotional service is easier than the latter because, being transcendental in nature, it frees one from reaction. In the 2nd chapter, preliminary knowledge of the soul and its entanglement in the material body were explained. How to get out of this material engagement by Buddha yoga or devotional service was also explained therein. In the 3rd chapter, it was explained that a person who is situated on the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform. And in the 4th chapter, the Lord told Arjuna that all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. However, at the end of the 4th chapter, the Lord advised Arjuna to wake up and fight, being situated in perfect knowledge. Therefore, by simultaneously stressing the importance of both work in devotion and in action in knowledge, Krishna has perplexed Arjuna and confused his determination. Arjuna understands that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activities. But if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work stopped? In other words, he thinks that sannyas, or renunciation in knowledge, should be altogether free from all kinds of activity, because work and renunciation appear to him to be incompatible. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge is non-reactive and therefore the same as inaction. He inquires, therefore, whether he should cease work altogether or work in full knowledge. We'll go to the second part of this. We're going to discuss this a little bit, and then we'll read the answer to the question. Om Agyanata Brandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The verse once again. Arjuna said, actually, would somebody like to paraphrase what the question was? Let's see who was listening. What was the question?
What is more beneficial?
Of what?
So there's two different renunciation or engaging.
Yes. Good. That's right. Oh Krishna, first you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of these two is more beneficial? So this is what's called submissive inquiry. We learned in the 4th chapter that it is essential to approach a spiritual master, one who is free from the vices of life, one who has conquered the senses, one who has conquered the mind, and one who is fully engaged and connected to Krishna. So, and it says that one should approach a spiritual master, tadvadi paripratena pariprakshena sevaya upadekshanti te yanam gyaninas tattva darshana. That they can impart knowledge unto you because they've seen the truth. And when you approach a spiritual master, you should render devotional service, and you should have submissive inquiry. The inquiry should be submissive, and it should be relevant to what is the real purpose of life. So Arjuna has taken Krishna as his spiritual master, and he is perplexed. Now, let's take a step back. This has been gone over before, but it's important to remember that Krishna's plan was to keep Arjuna confused. Arjuna was a pure devotee of the Lord. And thus, Krishna could use Arjuna in this way to teach us these most valuable lessons that are being taught in the Bhagavad Gita. He tells him, because you are my devotee and my friend, I am imparting this knowledge unto you. So there's a great trust between Krishna and Arjuna. So much so that if you remember that Arjuna chose Krishna to be on his side. He could have chosen Krishna's whole army. And Krishna said, I'm not even going to fight, but I'm going to choose you because I believe if you're there, all auspiciousness will be present. Krishna is the husband of the goddess of fortune. So you can't, with Krishna, you get all good fortune on your side. So there's a great bond, a great trust between them. So Arjuna is eternally a devotee of Krishna. But he's been put into this illusion in order to teach this message of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna often puts his devotees into great difficulty to show that how we are to react, how we are to overcome difficulties within our own lives, how we are to deal with our own perplexities. So this is taking place for our benefit. Krishna has actually already explained this topic. Now, we have the help of the purports of Srila Prabhupada, which really reveal Krishna's mind, his intention. expand upon it for our understanding. But Arjuna, in his condition, he was determined not to fight. He came to Krishna and he says, I really see no good in this. There's going to be a lot of killing. There's going to be a lot of what he considered to be sin. There's going to be destruction of families. There's no way we're going to be able to enjoy when it's all said and done. And I have no idea really what's to do. Best is if, we surrender and we walk away. I can live with that. I just can't live with the consequences of the fallout of it. Now, Krishna said, I don't think you can live with the consequences of it, because he did tell Arjuna that the consequences of not fighting are also pretty bad. Because you're looked at as a leader. You're looked at as you're Arjuna. You're the most respectable warrior. So if you become cowardice and run away, everybody will. This isn't just about a war. It's about your prescribed duties. It's about doing your duty. So if you run away, people will just abandon their duties. And that won't be a good thing either. He said, besides, I have a plan, he tells Arjuna. All this is going on according to my plan. So, I need you to act as an instrument in this plan. So this is all taking place for our benefit. And what is being taught? Now, we're not in a war. We're not in that situation right now. But we all have difficulties. And our attachment to our particular situations and the way that we perform our activities is what causes us various perplexities in life. So although we're not in the middle of a battle of Kurukshetra where our family members are on the other side and we're asked to fight them, and you see our guru and our grandfather, people that we respect, that we're being asked to fight against, it's not that dire for us. But you can take the most extreme circumstance and then you can apply it to something much less. So in our own lives, we may be riddled by very difficult situations. This is why the Bhagavad Gita will help us. So there's a choice that is being described. Arjuna says, if I work meaning if I fight, it's going to cause difficulty. And there's going to be reactions to that. And they already mentioned some of those reactions aren't necessarily going to be positive. Or I can renounce altogether. So he's confused. What should I do? Should I act or renounce? Walk away or stay and fight and deal with the consequences? But what Krishna is offering is a synthesis between the two of them. Acting in the renounced spirit. And earlier on, in the 4th chapter, he speaks about this. He calls this inaction in action. So inaction meaning that there is no karma, or you're not bound by the results of your activity, but yet you're still acting. And then he also says there's action in inaction. So if you think just by stop acting, by kind of running away from your problems, there's actually karma in that. So Krishna is teaching Arjuna this very important lesson, that we need to act, but also with knowledge. Srila Prabhupada goes through the 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, 4th chapter, gives a little summary up to this point, where Krishna gives Arjuna basic fundamental understanding of the soul and how the soul is different than matter. This is called knowledge. Knowledge is defined what is matter, what is spirit, and who is the controller of both. Now, what is matter? That is a huge, that's a huge topic that you can go into. Science dives into it, various social sciences, material sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, business. You can really dive into it very deeply. But without understanding that we're the spirit soul, and that Krishna is the controller of both, and actually this is not our eternal home, we could get lost in just studying the material science. But then he goes into Buddha Yoga. So the spiritual science, how to actually apply it. Because knowledge without application, it doesn't really get you anywhere. There's a saying, to know but not to do is really not to fully know. In the third chapter, Krishna really talks about prescribed duty and how important it is to perform one's prescribed duty. But he starts at a very preliminary level where there is a level of attachment in that duty. And he's there to teach us that attachment, even though you may do your duty, there's still some, if the attachment is still there, if you're still looking for the fruits of the results of your activities, you're going to be bound to karma, which means future births and deaths. And this is what Arjuna and us as well. We want to avoid this. We want to become free from that. So then with the implementation of knowledge, one can understand that knowledge of the self and knowledge of Krishna, that one can actually become free from the modes of material nature. We can rise above it. Now, with the implementation of knowledge, one can take one of two paths. So one is active, one is working. And then with knowledge, one can take the path of saying, you know what? This is like, I can become removed from all this because action is going to bring problems. You know? So my relationships bring problems. So therefore, free myself from relationships, free myself from action by just removing myself altogether. Krishna warns against that because he says, if you try to remove yourself prematurely, but your mind is still attached to the, desires and still, you still want things, then you're just really a pretender. And you're just going to, your mind's going to dwell on it, and eventually you'll kind of fall down from the knowledge that you gained. You'll never be able to live up to that. But then he also implements that one could actually use that knowledge and act in a renounced way. So where the fourth chapter left off, and this is where Krishna got confused. I'll read the verse at the end of the fourth chapter. He says, Krishna tells Arjuna, he says, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance shall be slashed with the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, stand and fight. So in one sense, Arjuna's thinking, okay, slash those doubts with knowledge, got it, all right, we're in good shape. And then stand and fight. And he's saying, that doesn't go with what I was actually trying to do. So he asked Krishna that. Now, in the third chapter is a very similar question that was asked. So sometimes we need to hear it again. And like I said, Arjuna, he had something in his mind. So sometimes we have things in our mind, and we have certain ways we want the outcome to come out. Isn't that right? And then somebody tells us something, and we hear it a certain way, because we're hoping, optimistically, it's going to be the way that we, kind of manufacture it for ourselves. But Arjuna did something wise. He was really seeking out knowledge. So he asked Krishna again. When you ask again, it means it's very important. And Krishna wouldn't be bringing this up a second time if he didn't want to really emphasize this particular point. So let's hear what Krishna has to say in the second verse. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Sri Bhagavan Vacha
Sannyasa Karma Yogascha
Sannyasa Karma Yogascha
Nishreyasya Karav Shishyate.
Karma Yoga Vishishyate.
We'll do that one more time so everybody can chant. I think it went out. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Sri Bhagavan Vacha
Sannyasya karma yogascha
Sannyasa yogascha
nishreyasya karab ubhav
nishreyasa bhavuva
tayostu karma sannyasat
tayasu karma sannyasa
karma yogo vishishyate.
karma yogo visishyate.
In the interest of time, we'll just go right into the translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work and devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work and devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Again, the renunciation of work and work and devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work and devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Purport. Fruit of activities seeking sense gratification are cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to transmigrate to different types of bodies. This is confirmed, thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4.6 confirms this. I'll just read the English translation. People are mad after sense gratification, and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruit of activities in the past. Although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. Therefore, to act for sense gratification is not good. One is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about his real identity. As long as he does not know his real identity, he has to work for fruitive results for sense gratification. And as long as one is engrossed in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another. Although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop love for devotional service to Vasudeva, or Krishna. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. I'll read one more paragraph and then we'll discuss. Therefore, jnana, or knowledge that one is not the material body but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on the fruitive platform. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruitive platform. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the results of fruitive action so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails risk of falling. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the personality of God, Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them material, their renunciation is incomplete. Renunciation is complete when it is in knowledge that everything in existence belongs to the Lord, and that no one should claim proprietorship over anything. One should understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone. Then where is the question of renunciation? One who knows everything is Krishna's property, is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in Krishna's service. This perfect form of action is Krishna consciousness, and is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. So, renunciation is kind of a foreign term for those here in the West. Renunciation isn't something that we really get too much involved in. In fact, sense gratification is kind of the motto that we talk about here. There's not a whole lot of talk with, I got to do this, I got to do that. We start panicking, right? We go 5 minutes without our phone. We can't find our phone. What do? Somebody call my phone. Can somebody call my phone? We turn our phones on, and everybody turn your phones off so I can hear mine, right? Because we can't go 5, 10 minutes without our phone. Those that have kids, you take their phone away for like 5 minutes, and they start freaking out. I mean, they go through like major withdrawal. Social media, they just can't stay away from it. I mean, it's like, it's like they're addicted. So we don't do very good with renunciation. Renunciation isn't really taught, at all from the beginning of life. In fact, what is taught? You gotta more or less identify with what our body is. And there's not a lot of attention given to the spirit soul. And this goes all the way up through society, not just from a young age. That's why it's very important for those that are parents, those that are influencers, those that are teachers, to be able to help the children understand. We have a Sunday school here so they can get some basic principles. Family members, in fact, a lot of times when children are born, they're given a name of God. Like they're given the name, Govinda or Krishna or Madhava, Keshava, or female name of one of the gopis. To always remember, actually, you're connected with Krishna. You have an eternal connection with Krishna. You identify yourself as a servant of Krishna. But renunciation is very difficult. It's really not brought about. So right from the very beginning, you're taught go to school, do good in school, join a sports team, do really good in sports, and what is the goal? The goal is, you want to be the best in your class, you want to, go to the best college. What's the goal? So you can get that really nice, you get a nice secure life, you can get a really nice car, a better car than your parents had, more cars than your parents had, a bigger house than your parents had, nice vacations, good insurance package, a good pension plan. It's all about developing the comforts of life, getting situated here in this material world. And Srila Prabhupada says right from this purport that, people are mad after sense gratification, but they forget that despite our endeavors to try hard and hard again, and we're not the only ones, we're not the only generation. This has happened generation after generation after generation, going back thousands of years. This is always, this has been the drive. But yet, only those who have developed detachment from this world have actually been the ones to actually find peace. Not those who have actually accumulated the most things. They say you never see a U-Haul truck following a hearse, right? Because you can never take, all that you've accumulated with you when you go. You go to the grave empty-handed. You have your karma, of course, but all your material belongings, they get left behind. So we forget this. We hear about it, but we have to continue to be reminded of this. We have to continue to hear about it. Why? Because we forget. We have difficult situations bombard us. Life is full of misery. We just went through, coronavirus, still kind of going through it, hopefully coming out of it. But people have lost, family members. People have their own personal diseases, that they've gone through. Children have their own situations. We may have gone through our own, work problems or work situations. And then it helps us kind of refocus a little bit, and then we forget again. And it comes, and then we forget again. So therefore, sometimes when difficulties come, it's actually God's actually sending them so we can actually help refocus and remember. I was just at the dentist, and they were drilling. They had a cavity, and he said they were drilling. I mean, it felt like they were excavating something down there. I mean, they were like 45 minutes. You get that sound, and they got the. And I just thought to myself, I'm laying there, I am never going to have another sugary thing in my life. I'm never going to do it. You know, just the pain and the, you know, and. But then a week later, it wasn't so bad. You know, it wasn't. You know, you forget about it. You know, and that's what happens in life. You know, we forget about these things. So the purpose of life is to redevelop our loving relationship with Krishna. And for some, the goal may be just to become liberated. You know, I want out of this. I want out of this situation. And by acquiring transcendental knowledge, acquiring knowledge about, you know, our eternal nature, you know, that is a way that we can become grounded and actually overcome the temptations of the world around us that are constantly bombarding us. But it's not sufficient. Knowledge alone is not sufficient, and that's what this verse is telling us. That it's good, it's required. Right? Krishna spoke about this in the previous chapter, that the best type of sacrifice a person can make is a sacrifice in knowledge. We should know what we're doing. We should understand who Krishna is. You know? We should understand Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. But Krishna simply doesn't want us to remain idle in knowledge. But he wants us to be able to use that knowledge for purification of ourselves. Now, it works in two ways. One, we need it. Because if we don't have activity, it becomes very difficult. Try to stay idle for some time. I remember I went to a japa retreat, and you couldn't talk. We did a manuvrata for 2 days. Now, we were producing sound, but it was Krishna's name, so that's not a material sound. But just the fact that people couldn't talk and communicate and interact, I mean, it drove people. I mean, people were like on it was like a withdrawal. But it's such a challenge, and Krishna doesn't recommend it, and Arjuna rejects it. And she says, at the end, he says, I won't be able to perform that. And for Krishna says, this is actually more practical. Why? Because it purifies the senses. Krishna consciousness is a process. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. Krishna consciousness is a process. It's not like you wake up one day and you're purified. Your material desires get transformed. It's the process of transformation, and transformation takes time. So we may go through these kind of ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. And therefore we have to purify. We're in the process of purification, like a drop of water that falls from the sky, it hits the ground, becomes muddy, and then runs through a filter. It takes some time to go through that filter and come back out pure. This purification process, the most effective way is to engage our body and senses in the service of Krishna, the master of the senses. And in that way, we actually achieve the end result of liberation, because we become free from material entanglement, but we attach ourselves to Krishna. Make sense? So that is the process of Krishna consciousness. That is what's being taught here by Krishna. Now, this last point about proprietorship. Our attachments often come when we feel a sense of proprietorship over something. And that's why the temple is such an important place to come to render devotional service. Because when we come to the temple, it's clear this actually belongs to Krishna. Actually, everything belongs to Krishna. When we come here, it's hard to say, this is mine. Right? So I'm coming, I'm doing something, who am I doing it for? It's clear, I'm doing it for Krishna. I'm doing it for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna says, "Want you to see me everywhere." So it's not just to see one in the temple. But temples are extremely important, because when you come, you actually get to see, I'm a servant. I'm a servant of Krishna here in the temple. So I'll stop here. Let's see, we have about 3 minutes or so, if there's any questions or comments about today's verse and topic. Is it all? I hope it was all clear for everyone. So we're going to continue our study of the 5th chapter. I always felt this is always my favorite chapter because I felt it was the most relevant. Again, action in Krishna consciousness. We'll learn about how to, the proper mentality of a person who is in the process of acting, but in the mood of renunciation. Vishnu Prabhu, you have a question? Hare Krishna.
In the first verse, Srila Prabhupada was saying, work in knowledge you had to do that. So you talked a little bit about it. Could you just summarize what the knowledge is that one should work in?
Yeah.
What is that knowledge?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. So, work in knowledge. Knowledge that we are spirit souls, not our material body, and knowledge of who Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the last verse of this chapter, Krishna will say that, he says, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam. When you understand that I am the actual goal of all sacrifices and austerities that one performs, that I am the controller and master of all the demigods, and all great things of this world, and that I am the well-wishing friend of all living entities. When one understands this, one can actually become peaceful in life. So, understanding who Krishna is as the Supreme Lord, and also an understanding who we are as eternal spirit souls. When we can act in that knowledge, then our action can be complete in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so I think it's time for Artik. If we have any more discussion after the Artik, we can discuss. I do want to say real quick for those that have come in, we've gone mask optional. I never mentioned this before. I'll mention it a couple times. We went mask optional right after Gaur Purnima. So those that are wearing masks, please feel free to continue to wear them. Those that choose not to, that is fine as well. I don't want anybody to feel awkward either way. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.